This is ABC Fora.
David Marr, the book that we're discussing today, we're talking about investigative journalism, and David Marr's book, The Henson Case. And I think we all remember, I'll ask David, all of these speakers will just speak for perhaps 2 or 3 minutes about their book, and then we'll just have an open Q&A about the whole thing. But Dave, we all remember the Henson case. David, I've read the book, but what was it, 1 year ago, 2 years ago? Was
exactly 1 year ago. I mean, today's the 22nd, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was the 22nd of May last year.
And it was one of those extraordinary conflagrations that just went boom, and everybody was talking about it, rather in the manner of the Cronulla Sharks saga from Four Corners. It was that topic that went and went and went, and everybody had a view on it. Robert and Paola wrote the book Born or Bred about Martin Bryant, and again, tragically, if the Americans will all remember where they were when JFK was shot, all of us will always remember where we were when we heard about that terrible, terrible tragedy at Port Arthur and Martin Bryant. And an amazing book. I mean, the forensic detail that you have in there I found stunning. And Michael Bacallard has written this book, Behind the Exclusive Brethren, and I really, really enjoyed the book about, am I allowed to say a totally wacko Christian cult? Beyond wacko, and I hope this is being recorded and I hope this goes out. I mean, just amazing, the belief system that people live their lives by with diktats coming from on high. So perhaps we'll ask David, if you could just, David, perhaps everybody welcome David Marr to speak 3 or 4 minutes just about the topic, and then we'll open it for questions.
Bill Henson is a photographer that I've known and somewhat admired for a long time. As in my very first report of the crisis that blew up exactly a year ago, I did refer to some of his work as creepy and melodramatic, which I think some of it still is. And what blew up was a panic. And I realised in the course of writing this book that actually panic is my subject. I've been writing about panics all my career. My first book was about Sir Garfield Barwick, the then Chief Justice. He'd been one of the driving forces behind the sacking in 1975. I was furious with him for what he had done back in 1975. I wrote a biography which was supposed to see him resign from the High Court and perhaps even be prosecuted for treason. Neither of those things happened. But I realised that it was the panic of 1975, and panic and explaining panic has been a great theme of my career. And here was this extraordinary panic, an amazing panic, blowing up everywhere. One of the greatest arts controversies in the history of this country, and blowing up and blowing up and blowing up again and again and again. And the only one of these kinds of controversies that has ever drawn the Prime Minister into the fray, which determined very much the temperature and the course of what occurred. But what was actually happening was being a bit like a bushfire, I suppose. It was consuming itself as it went, and I realised that what the public didn't have was a narrative account of where this had all come from, how it had blown up, and where it was heading. And so I set about doing what we can't do in newspapers, never have been able to do, even in the most glory days of newspapers, which is to write a long narrative account as it was happening, of what was happening, and it was the most thrilling professional exercise of my career. I enjoyed myself extraordinarily in the course of it. It was swift, it was happening, it was breaking all around me. People were so ashamed of themselves or so fired up that nearly everybody was happy to speak to me. And at the end of it all, I had the prospect of the person who had bunkered himself down throughout it, Henson, that I would be able to get to Henson, which is what occurred. And the book was out within a couple of months of what we thought was the end of the crisis, and then the publication of the book provoked yet a third crisis, and the lid blew off Krakatoa once again. And this was short, sharp, book-length journalism as it was happening, and that was my aim. That's what the book is.
This is ABC Fora.